We're heading to the vast inland deserts to find Australia's largest outback outlaw, the camel. On the roads of far west Queensland, we're reminded of another serious introduced threat to native wildlife. Not a species of animal, but a human invention, the automobile. An absolutely gorgeous barn owl stands frightened and helpless by the side of the road. It's been hit by a vehicle and desperately needs our help. It looks like a broken wing, and the patient would have no chance of hunting or fending for himself if left in the wild. We're as gentle as can be with this poor little bloke as we give him some roadside first aid. The threat now is shock, and we want him to feel safe and secure while we take care of him. The only choice is to take him with us for the rest of the trip until we can get him back home to Australia Zoo for some intensive care and rehabilitation.
The first time anyone travels through the harsh yet beautiful desert, they wonder how anything can survive such tough conditions, let alone an introduced species that was never meant to live here. The reality is that the desert is teeming with life, most of it hidden from view and highly specialised to cope with the hot, dry terrain. And even out here, some of the toughest country on earth, you'll find animals from other parts of the world surviving and even thriving alongside the Australian native species. We're searching for dromedary camels.
You can see this goanna in front of me. It's a Spencer's monitor. The idea, the little trick to getting close to goannas is don't look them right in the eye. When you look them in the eye, they know they've been had and they get very nervous. So you can see this is a young Spencer's monitor. Beautiful goanna found only out here on the arid tablelands, black soil plains. Very distinct band. Now the Spencer's monitor is quite a habitat specific animal. He only lives on these big plains, and what he'll do is if he feels threatened, he'll flatten out and lay very still, just like this little bloke. Now, that's great. He has no natural predators out here apart from birds of prey, but once you throw the feral species into the equation, he runs himself into a lot of problem. He sits flat like this when a fox or a cat comes along. They're gonna eat him really quickly.
We're on the fringe of the Simpson Desert, and so far, hardly a sign of the camels that we know are out here in their thousands. I thought their bulk and height would have made them easy to spot, but that's not the case. It's their dusty coloured coats and the camouflage skills that make them almost invisible in their adopted homeland. As we push deep in the desert, we start to spot individual tracks and even signs of camel herds. We're getting close. We push on towards a rendezvous with a camel mustering team where a helicopter and some cowboys are awaiting our arrival, ready for an early morning start. We've joined this experienced team to study the impact of these large animals on the very fragile desert environment. Everywhere else, they've been totally domesticated, so the Australian dromedaries are the last existing herds of wild camels anywhere in the world, and they don't even belong here. This is dangerous work, and we're advised to get a bit of driving practice before we even start the chase. One mistake in this rugged terrain could jeopardise the whole project, so we're going through a bit of practice and training. This certainly won't go astray. I don't know about Terry's driving. She's ducking and weaving all over the place. The trees out here, these mulga trees, they're like pieces of steel. And if you get hit by them, you're gonna get torn to bits. All right, here we go. Here come the camels. The choppers start to muster into position. Closer and closer to our four-wheel drive.
We set out with the idea of exposing this outlaw as an animal wreaking havoc on our wildlife and environment. But what we found was very different. They prefer to eat trees and vegetation that the local native animals don't like, and being a browser, only about 2% of their diet is grass. They walk on soft pads instead of hooves, so erosion and worn tracks were very minimal. In fact, we found hardly any evidence at all to support the idea that camels are excessively harmful to the environment, particularly on cattle properties where we found this big herd. They can survive the desert climate for weeks without water. Their body systems are designed to conserve moisture, and the hump is a fat store which develops after birth. Camel calves are born without any hump at all.
This is an R22 mustering chopper, and this is me mate. He's an absolute brilliant chopper pilot, and he's slowly working the herd as stress-free as possible right into the path of our four-wheel drive. Now, we're pretty specific with the camels that we want to target, and we've got to get alongside close enough so I can... Oh! Wiped out! Terry's run me into a mulga, straight in my head. Crikey, that's gotta hurt. Chopper swings round and tries to stop Terry. She's got no idea of knowing I've been knocked clean off the four-wheel drive. I start running after it. The chopper lands in front of Terry, pulls her up, and I gotta go in for a damage report. Slow up there, Terry. Slow down, slow down. I've ripped my ear wide open. Have a go at this.
Oh, come on, very good. You have to clean up, Steve.
Yeah, probably split a bit, eh?
Yes, clean up.
Well, I don't think it's any use cleaning up now.
Okay.
Let's get around these camels.
Nah, she'll be right. And there's no chance of a doctor out here anyway, so I might as well continue with the muster. What the heck? Now, camels prefer to run from danger rather than stand and fight. So once we get them on the move, mustering from a four-wheel drive and helicopter works really well. They just keep moving away from us in whatever direction we determine. Here we go. We've got one singled out. Lasso on. No. Crikey, they're just dodging and weaving through the mulga. They make it look easy, really hard to catch, and somehow they seem to know exactly where the rope's heading for them, and they just dodge or weave. Big animals with a lot of power in the kick. Pretty decent set of teeth. This is a really substantial herd. We're going to leave them all here to go about their job. I don't reckon they're doing too much damage to the Australian wilderness. Our chopper pilot, Craig, he swung back round. He spotted an orphan baby. Here she is. Look at her. She's got no mother. Now what are we going to do?
This beautiful little girl would be about 4 months of age. Her mother will only have a calf about every 2 years. She's got to produce about 6 liters of milk every day just to grow this little girl up.
Yeah, she's quiet now.
Since this poor little thin girl was running completely separate from the herd, she must be orphaned and will need hand rearing to ensure she makes it to maturity. She's come back home with us to Australia Zoo near Birwa on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. She'll help zoo visitors understand the camel's role on Earth and how they've taken a place in Australia as an introduced animal. Right from the start, she seems to settle in with the staff, and we're really glad that we saved her life.
Very clever.
Even behind the scenes at the office, she feels perfectly at home coming right inside. Australia's camel population is remarkably healthy, disease-free, and vigorous, and there is a steadily increasing demand for them in other hot, arid parts of the world. But this little girl's staying right here with us, and all she wants for now are lots of cuddles.
Come on, sweetheart. Look at the size of her!
She's now grown to adolescence and bonded with the zoo staff, especially Steve.